I can still hear the sound of the front door slamming behind me, like a final nail in the coffin of everything I thought I knew. My life had just shattered into pieces, and I couldn't make sense of any of it. I was standing on the cold porch, my fingers numb, clutching my backpack as if it could hold me together. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. It felt like the world was closing in around me. That night, everything changed. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I thought I would tell them, and maybe they'd be upset, maybe disappointed, but they'd understand. After all, they were my parents. They were supposed to be there for me, right? But no, nothing about that night went as I imagined. I had known for a few weeks, the tiny heartbeat inside me, the undeniable feeling of change. I wasn't ready, but who really is? I had spent every night lying awake, wondering how it happened, how my life had come to this. I wasn't some reckless girl, I had been careful. I wasn't like the others, the ones who let everything fall apart without a second thought. But the truth is, I was just as scared as everyone else who's ever made a mistake. I never thought I'd find myself standing there, trying to explain it to them. Mom, Dad. I'm pregnant, I said, the words tasting foreign on my tongue. As soon as I said it, the air felt thick. Suffocating. My hands shook, and I stared down at the floor, unable to look them in the eye. My mother was the first to speak, her voice cracking as tears welled up in her eyes. Emma, how could you? You're still so young. We raised you better than this, she cried. I wanted to hold her, to tell her I hadn't meant for any of this to happen, but my words felt stuck in my throat. Then, my father. His face reddened, his jaw clenched so tightly I thought it might break. His anger wasn't the kind that came in bursts, but rather this cold, silent fury that took over the room. You've ruined everything, he spat, his words biting like daggers. Everything we've worked for, every dream we've had for you, gone. I flinched at his words, each one piercing deeper than the last. I'm sorry, I whispered, my voice trembling. I didn't mean for this to happen. But it was too late. My father's gaze turned steely, devoid of compassion. You need to leave, he said, his tone final. We can't have this under our roof. You've made your choice, now you have to live with it. I could feel my chest tightening as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. My mother tried to say something, but her voice was a mere echo of her husband's anger. Please. Just think about this, she pleaded, but her words had no weight anymore. It was as if she had already made her peace with what was happening, her hands trembling as she reached out to me. Leave. Emma, my father repeated, his voice unyielding. Now. I looked at my mother, searching for a flicker of support, but she couldn't even meet my gaze. The betrayal I felt, not just from my father but from both of them, was suffocating. I wasn't sure who had hurt me more, the coldness in my father's eyes or the silence from my mother. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to scream, to beg them to understand, but the words wouldn't come. I just stood there, frozen, caught between the past and the unknown future. And then it hit me. There was no going back. My parents had made their decision. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about their pride, their shame, their image. I grabbed my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and turned to face the door. The cold wind hit me as I stepped out into the night. It wasn't just the wind that made me shiver. It was the finality of it all, the crushing realization that my family no longer wanted me. I was alone. And that's how I ended up standing on the front porch, my heart breaking, unsure of what came next. I didn't know it at the time, but that moment marked the beginning of a journey I never could have imagined. The road ahead was long, filled with darkness, loneliness, and a fear that clung to me like a second skin. But it was also the first step towards something I would never have expected. As I walked away from that house, from everything I knew, all I could think was, where do I go now? Emma's point of view. I couldn't believe I was still walking. Each step felt heavier than the last, each footfall echoing the uncertainty that swirled around me. The streets, though once familiar, now seemed like a maze, and the world I once knew felt like a distant memory. But there was no turning back. I had nowhere to go, No place to hide. So, I walked. I kept thinking that any moment, someone would stop me, someone would pull me out of this nightmare. But no one did. The city buzzed with people who didn't care, each person wrapped in their own world. I could feel the weight of my isolation grow with every passing second. I tried calling my best friend, Sarah, but the phone just rang and rang. I knew she was probably at school or work, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was one of the last people I could turn to. After all, how could I expect anyone to understand? My parents, my own flesh and blood, had thrown me out like I was nothing, and now I was drifting through a sea of strangers. The only thing that kept me moving forward was the baby inside me. That small, constant reminder that I couldn't give up. I remember walking aimlessly for hours until my feet ached and my stomach growled with hunger. I didn't have any money, no food. And I was running out of places to go. The world felt suffocating, and I was drowning in it. As I turned the corner on the busy street, I saw it, the dim light of a shelter just ahead. I had passed by it several times before, but I had always dismissed it. I didn't want to admit to myself that I might need help. But today was different. Today, I couldn't afford to be proud anymore. I walked in, heart racing, afraid of what I might find. The air inside was thick with the smell of old blankets and musty furniture. People sat in the common area, some of them reading, others just staring blankly into space. It was a quiet kind of sadness that filled the room. The woman behind the desk looked up as I walked in. She had kind eyes, eyes that didn't judge me, and for the first time that day, I felt like I could breathe a little easier. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft and warm. I swallowed, forcing the lump in my throat down. I need a place to stay for the night," I said. The words feeling so small compared to everything I was carrying inside me. She nodded and gave me a key to a small room at the back of the shelter. I didn't ask questions. I just took it. The shelter wasn't much, but it was safe. That night, I lay on the cot in a small, dimly lit room, trying to find some comfort in the thin blanket that barely covered me. The other women in the room slept soundly, and for a moment, I thought I might too. But I couldn't. My mind kept racing, thinking of what had happened, of what was going to happen. I kept hearing my father's words in my head, "You need to leave." I rolled over onto my side, clutching my stomach, the baby inside me kicking gently. It was a small comfort. The only thing in this entire world that was mine and mine alone. I don't know how long I stayed awake that night, staring at the ceiling, but at some point, exhaustion finally took over. And I fell into a restless sleep. The next morning, I woke up before anyone else. The room was still dark, and I could hear the faint sounds of footsteps outside. I stayed in bed for a while, staring at the walls, trying to make sense of what had happened, of what was happening. My body felt heavy, like I was being weighed down by the burden of my own decisions. I wanted to call my parents. I wanted to ask them to take me back. But I knew that was impossible. They had made their decision, and I had to make mine. And, for the first time in my life, I had no choice but to take responsibility for myself. The shelter wasn't a long-term solution, and I knew that. I couldn't stay there forever. So, after a quick breakfast of cereal and coffee, I decided to leave. The streets were bustling with people going about their daily lives, oblivious to the girl walking among them, alone and pregnant. The noise of the city seemed to amplify my loneliness. I wandered through the streets for a while, unsure of where to go. I thought of Sarah again, but I knew she was probably with her family, trying to keep her life on track. I didn't want to burden anyone with my problems, especially not now. I kept walking until I found a small park, a quiet place away from the hustle of the city. I sat down on a bench, trying to gather my thoughts. The baby kicked again, and I smiled softly, pressing my hand to my stomach. I had always known I wasn't ready to be a mother. But now, there was no turning back. I couldn't change what had happened, and I couldn't undo the choices I had made. But I could keep going. I could figure this out, one step at a time. The thought of my grandfather crossed my mind. I hadn't spoken to him in years. My mother never liked him, and over the years, the distance between us grew. But he had always been kind to me, and I remembered how he used to tell me stories of when he was in the military, how he had always found a way to survive, no matter the odds. Maybe he was the one person who could help me. I dug through my backpack for my old phone. I didn't know if I would be able to get through to him, but I had to try. With shaking hands, I dialed his number. The phone rang a few times before he picked up. "Hello, Grandpa?" I said, my voice trembling. "It's Emma." There was a long pause on the other end. I wasn't sure if he recognized my voice at first. But then he spoke again. "Emma? Where are you? What's going on?" I took a deep breath, unsure of what to say. I need help. I don't know where else to go." He didn't ask questions. Instead, he said, "Come to my house. I'll be waiting for you." The relief I felt when he said those words was overwhelming. For the first time in days, I felt like I wasn't entirely alone. Maybe I had a chance after all. I took the bus to the small town where my grandfather lived. It felt like a lifetime away from the city, and as the bus rolled along the quiet roads, I couldn't help but think about how different everything had become. I was no longer the girl I used to be. I had been shattered, thrown out by the very people who were supposed to love me. But I couldn't change that. All I could do was keep moving forward. When I arrived at his house, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. It wasn't much, just a small, modest home, tucked away at the edge of the town. But it was a place of safety, a place where I could breathe. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding in my chest. My grandfather opened it with a warm smile, his graying hair and wrinkled face offering a sense of comfort I hadn't realized I needed. "Come in, Emma," he said, his voice low but steady. "It's good to see you." And as I stepped inside, something inside me shifted. Maybe it wasn't too late to turn things around. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to make it through this. Stepping into my grandfather's house was like stepping into a different world. It wasn't anything like the life I'd known in the city. No high-tech gadgets, no expensive furniture, no fast-paced noise. His house was simple, functional, and warm, with the smell of old wood and the faint scent of coffee always in the air. It was quiet, and there was a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in days. My grandfather didn't say much at first. He showed me to a small room at the back of the house, a room that smelled of cedar wood and books. It wasn't much, but it felt like home. A real home. Not like the place I had left behind. As soon as I stepped inside, I felt the weight of everything I had been carrying start to lift. If only a little. It wasn't gone. Not by any means, but at least here, I wasn't so alone. Grandpa didn't try to force me to talk about what happened. Instead, he went about his business, making me a cup of tea and setting a bowl of soup in front of me. The silence between us was comfortable, but I could feel his eyes on me sometimes, waiting for me to speak. It was as if he knew that when I was ready, I'd open up. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel the pressure to explain myself. I didn't need to say anything, not yet. Grandpa woke up at the crack of dawn to work in his garden. He'd spent most of his life as a soldier, but now, in his old age, he found peace in the simplicity of the land. Every morning, I would find him out there, digging in the soil or trimming the vines, his hands moving with the practiced ease of someone who had done this all his life. I would join him when I could, feeling the fresh air and dirt beneath my fingertips. It felt grounding, something I needed after everything that had happened. In the evenings, he would tell me stories of his time in the army, how he survived wars, how he learned to keep moving forward no matter the odds. There was something about his stories, something that made me feel like maybe I, too, could find my way out of the dark. "Emma," he said one evening, his voice low and steady as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, "life has a way of knocking you down. It always will. But the only thing you can control is how you get back up. You've got to make your own way in this world. No one's going to do it for you." His words settled deep within me, like seeds in the ground. And I didn't realize it at the time, but they were beginning to take root. I still struggled with what had happened, though. My thoughts kept drifting back to my parents, to the moment they had turned their backs on me. I kept wondering if they'd changed their minds, if maybe, just maybe, they were regretting their decision. But every time I thought of calling them, I felt a knot in my stomach. The hurt, the betrayal, was still there, fresh and raw. One afternoon, as I was helping Grandpa in the garden, I brought up my parents. "Grandpa," I said, not meeting his gaze, "why did they do it? Why did they just throw me out like that?" My voice cracked and I felt a lump in my throat. Grandpa stopped what he was doing and turned to look at me. His face was serious, his gaze soft but firm. "They didn't throw you out because they didn't love you, Emma," he said quietly. "They did it because they were scared. Fear makes people do strange things. They were scared of what the world would think of them, scared of what people would say about you. But it wasn't right. And it wasn't your fault." I felt the sting of his words. It wasn't the first time I'd heard something like this, but hearing it from Grandpa made it feel real. I'd always believed that somehow, some way, I had done something wrong. But he was right. They were scared. And their fear had turned into rejection, leaving me to pick up the pieces. "Do you think they'll ever want me back?" I asked, the question hanging in the air like a heavy fog. Grandpa didn't answer right away. He turned back to the soil, digging into it like he was digging for the answers he knew I was looking for. "I don't know, Emma, but you can't keep waiting for them to fix things. You have to fix it yourself." His words hit me hard. Maybe he was right. Maybe I couldn't keep holding on to the idea of them accepting me back. Maybe I had to start thinking about what was best for me, for the baby, for my future. That evening, Grandpa told me something I wasn't expecting. He leaned back in his chair, his hands resting on his knees, and looked at me in a way he never had before. There was something different in his eyes, a kind of vulnerability I had never seen. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice calm but with an edge of emotion I hadn't noticed before. "Your mother, she wasn't always like this. When she was your age, she made a choice that almost destroyed her. She was pregnant, too. Just like you." I stared at him, shocked. I had never known about this. My mother had never mentioned it, and I had always assumed her life had been perfect, at least from my child's perspective. She came to me, just like you came to me. She was scared. And she didn't know where to turn. Her parents had turned their backs on her, too, and she didn't have anyone but me. But I told her the same thing I'm telling you now. Don't let fear control you. Don't let anyone else dictate your future. The revelation was a lot to take in. My mother had been in the same position I was, faced with a choice she didn't feel prepared to make. She had been abandoned, too. I couldn't believe it, this part of her life, hidden away from me all these years. Grandpa paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. Then he continued. "Your mother didn't let that define her. She made a life, built a family. She got through it. And so will you." I didn't know what to say. All these years, I had seen my mother as someone who had it all figured out. But now I realized that she had been just as broken, just as lost, as I felt. The weight of that realization was heavy, but somehow, it also gave me hope. Maybe I wasn't the failure I thought I was. Maybe my mother had done the best she could, given the circumstances. Maybe I could do the same. As the days passed, I began to understand what Grandpa meant about not letting fear control me. I started to feel something inside me shift. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't immediate, but I could sense a change. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was beginning to live again. And with Grandpa by my side, I knew I had a chance to heal, to grow, and maybe, just maybe, become the kind of person I could be proud of. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself slowly adjusting to life at Grandpa's house. His calm presence had become a comfort to me, but more importantly, I started to feel like I was reclaiming a part of myself that had been lost in the chaos of the past months. The simple rhythm of the days, waking up early, helping Grandpa with the garden, Sharing meals together gave me a sense of normalcy that I hadn't known in a long time. But despite the peace I felt here, I still struggled with my future. The fear of what lay ahead lingered in my mind, heavy and unshakable. I had always been a planner, someone who liked to know what came next, but now everything felt uncertain. Every time I thought about the baby growing inside me, my heart filled with both love and anxiety. Could I really be a mother? Was I capable of raising a child? And what about my parents? Could I ever find the courage to face them again? One evening, after dinner, Grandpa and I sat on the porch, the warm glow of the setting sun painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. The sound of crickets chirping filled the air, and for the first time in a while, I felt calm. But I knew that soon, I would have to make a decision that would change everything. Grandpa, I said softly, I've been thinking a lot about the future, about the baby. I'm not sure I'm ready for this. I don't even know what to do next. Grandpa didn't immediately respond. He simply sat there, his gaze fixed on the horizon, as if gathering his thoughts. Finally, he spoke, his voice steady and comforting. You'll never feel ready, Emma. There's no such thing as the perfect moment to do anything. But you have something in you that most people don't. Strength. You've already made it this far, haven't you? His words were simple, but they hit me with a force I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't about waiting for the right moment. It was about stepping up, even when it seemed impossible. I had been through so much, yet I was still here, still standing. I stared at the ground for a moment, letting his words sink in. The idea of becoming a mother was terrifying, but I knew I had no other choice. I couldn't let fear control me anymore. I had to take responsibility for my actions, for my future, and for the life growing inside me. I had to be strong, for myself and for the baby. I want to keep the baby, I said, my voice trembling with both fear and resolve. I don't know what's going to happen, but I want to try. I want to do this right. Grandpa didn't say anything at first, but I could see the pride in his eyes. He reached over and placed a hand on my shoulder, his grip firm and steady. I'm proud of you, Emma, he said quietly. I don't know what's ahead, but I know you'll face it with everything you've got. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to live again, to take charge of my life. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least I knew where I stood. As the days passed, I began to prepare myself for the next step. Facing Alex, the father of my child. I hadn't heard from him since the day I told him about the pregnancy. He had distanced himself, and I didn't blame him for that. I didn't know what kind of man he was, and I didn't know if I could trust him. But there was no way around it. If I was going to be a mother, I needed to know if he was going to be a part of my life, or if I would have to do this alone. One evening, as I sat in my room, I decided to send him a message. It wasn't easy, but I had to do it. I typed out the words slowly, my fingers trembling on the screen. Alex, I know things ended badly between us, but I'm pregnant. And I can't do this alone. I need to know if you're willing to be a part of this. If you're willing to help me with the baby. I stared at the screen for a long time before I finally hit send. The moment I did, my heart raced. What if he didn't respond? What if he didn't want anything to do with me or the baby? Minutes felt like hours, but then, finally, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Alex. Emma, I'm so sorry for everything. I've been a coward, and I know I should have been there for you. I don't know what the future holds, but I want to be a part of this. I want to help. I'm here for you. I felt a rush of emotions flood over me, relief, anger, sadness, and hope, all at once. Alex had acknowledged his mistakes, but more importantly, he was willing to try. He was willing to be there for the baby. I didn't know what that would look like, but it was a start. The hardest part, though, was still ahead of me. I had to face my parents. I had no idea how to start, what to say, or even if they would care. But I knew I had to try. For me. For the baby. A few days after hearing from Alex, I decided it was time. I called my mother first. Her voice was shaky when she answered, and I could tell she had been waiting for this call. We hadn't spoken since the day they kicked me out. "Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I need to talk to you." There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, like she was preparing herself for the worst. "What is it, Emma?" "I'm pregnant," I said. The words sounding different now, more like a statement than a confession. "And I know you don't want to hear it, but I need you to know that I'm trying. I'm going to keep the baby. I'm going to raise it no matter what." My mother didn't say anything for a while, and I began to think she had hung up. But then, her voice came through, soft and broken. "Emma, I'm sorry. I never should have kicked you out. I didn't know what to do, but I should have been there for you. I don't know how to make it right, but I'm here. We're here for you." I felt a wave of emotion crash over me. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't everything I had hoped for, but it was something. My mother, for the first time, was willing to be there for me. As I hung up the phone, I felt like a weight had been lifted. I had taken a huge step forward, and while I didn't know what the future held, I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer just surviving. I was starting to build the life I wanted, a life that was mine to shape. And no matter how hard it got, no matter how many obstacles I faced, I knew I was strong enough to keep going. For me. For the baby. For my future. The weeks seemed to fly by, one day melting into the next. Life at Grandpa's house had become more than just a place of refuge. It had become my anchor. It was where I felt safe, where I could breathe. And where I was learning to be something I hadn't thought I could be, strong. But despite the calm that had settled over me, there were still moments when the weight of it all felt like too much. The closer I got to my due date, the more I began to feel the pressure mounting. The reality of what I was about to face, becoming a mother, taking on a responsibility I had never imagined, was overwhelming. One evening, as I sat on the porch with Grandpa, I realized how far I had come, but how far I still had to go. "You're getting close." "Emma," Grandpa said, his voice low, as we both gazed out at the setting sun. "How do you feel about everything?" I took a deep breath, letting the cool evening air fill my lungs. "I feel scared," I admitted, looking down at my hands. "I'm not sure if I'm ready. What if I mess up? What if I don't know how to do this?" Grandpa was quiet for a moment, and I could feel his eyes on me. I looked up at him, and for the first time, I saw a vulnerability in his expression that I hadn't noticed before. He had lived through wars, through losses, through things I couldn't even fathom. And yet, here he was, listening to me, guiding me. "You don't have to be perfect, Emma," he said finally. "You just have to try. You're not alone in this. You have people who care about you. And you're stronger than you think." His words were simple, but they settled deep into my heart. I didn't have to have everything figured out. I just had to keep going. I just had to do my best. But just as I began to find some peace in my decision, the universe decided to throw another curveball my way. It started with a phone call from Alex. He was late, something that had been happening more and more lately, but this time, something felt different. His voice was distant when he answered, and there was an edge to it that I couldn't ignore. "Emma, we need to talk," he said, his voice tight. "I've been thinking a lot, and I don't think I'm ready for this." My heart sank. My world spun. I could feel the panic rising in my chest. But I forced myself to stay calm. "Alex, what are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think I can be the kind of father you want me to be. I'm not ready for this responsibility, and I don't know if I can handle it," he admitted, the words heavy with regret. "I think it's better if I step back. I can't do this." The world seemed to stop. My hands went numb as I held the phone, feeling my body tremble with the shock of what he had just said. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just sat there. The silence between us stretching until it felt unbearable. "Alex, I don't need you to be perfect," I said finally, forcing the words out, my throat tight with emotion. "I just need you to be here. I need you to help me through this. I don't want to do this alone." But his decision was final. I'm sorry, Emma. I don't know what else to say. I just don't think I can do it. The conversation ended abruptly, and I sat there, staring at my phone, the words echoing in my mind. I can't do this alone. Tears blurred my vision as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. I had spent so much time hoping that Alex would come through, that he would be there for me and for the baby. And now, just when I thought things were starting to make sense, he was walking away. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was furious with him, while another part of me felt an aching sadness that I couldn't shake. I had been abandoned once, but now it was happening again. As the weeks went by, I tried to focus on getting ready for the baby. I decorated the small room Grandpa had set up for me, filling it with soft blankets, baby clothes, and everything I thought I would need. But the uncertainty about Alex lingered like a shadow, hovering over everything I did. Then, one day, just as the due date was approaching, Grandpa collapsed. He had been complaining of feeling unwell for a few days, but I had brushed it off. He was getting older, and I thought it was just the usual aches and pains. But when he fainted in the kitchen that morning, everything changed. I rushed him to the hospital, my heart pounding with fear. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it wasn't good. The doctors ran tests, and the waiting room seemed to stretch on forever. It felt like everything I had worked so hard for was slipping through my fingers. Grandpa's condition turned out to be more serious than I could have imagined. He needed surgery, and the doctors were unsure of how well he would recover. My world tilted once again, and I found myself in the middle of another crisis, just as I was trying to find my footing. In that moment, I felt more alone than ever before. The night after Grandpa's surgery, I stayed at the hospital, waiting for news. The room was quiet except for the occasional beeping of the machines. I couldn't sleep. My thoughts were scattered, and my emotions felt like a storm inside me. What if Grandpa didn't make it? What if I lost the one person who had been there for me when no one else was? But as I sat there, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Alex. I've been thinking a lot, and I realize I can't just walk away. I'm here for you, Emma. I'll be there no matter what. I'm ready to try. I stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what I was reading. My mind raced, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. He was coming back. He was willing to try. When Grandpa woke up, he was groggy, but the surgery had been a success. The doctors said he would recover, and the relief I felt was overwhelming. As I sat by his side, holding his hand, I realized something. Life was never going to be easy, but it was mine to live. I had made it this far, and I wasn't about to give up now. The next few days passed in a blur of hospital visits and quiet conversations with Grandpa. But when I went home, I knew what I had to do. I had to face my future with strength, whether or not Alex was there. I wasn't going to wait for someone else to fix things for me. I was going to stand up and face everything, no matter how hard it was. And when the baby was finally born, with Grandpa at my side and Alex standing by me, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had everything I needed to build the future I wanted. It felt like I had been waiting for this moment my entire life, the first time I held my baby in my arms. The hospital room, with its sterile walls and beeping machines, faded into the background as I looked down at the tiny face that now depended entirely on me. His tiny hands curled around my fingers, and for a moment, it felt as though time had stopped. I had done it. I had faced everything: rejection, fear, heartbreak, and now, here I was, holding this precious little life in my arms. My son. I had a family now, even if it wasn't the family I had once imagined. The past few days had been a whirlwind, a mixture of pain, joy, exhaustion, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility. My body was still recovering, but my heart was full in a way I never expected. It wasn't just the love I felt for my baby, it was the realization that I had survived, that I had made it through the darkest times and come out on the other side stronger. In the days after the birth, the reality of motherhood began to settle in. I had read all the books. attended the classes, and talked to other mothers, but nothing could truly prepare me for what it was like to care for a newborn. The sleepless nights, the constant feedings, the overwhelming emotions, it was all so much to handle. But with each day, I grew into the role. Slowly, the exhaustion became just another part of the journey. And the overwhelming love I felt for my son pushed me forward. I had a lot of help. Grandpa was there, of course, though his health had taken a toll after the surgery. He wasn't as mobile as he used to be, but he was still my rock. He was the one who told me I could do it, and he never let me doubt myself. His quiet support meant more than I could ever express. Then there was Alex. When I saw him in the hospital, standing there, looking at our son with tears in his eyes, I knew he had changed. I wasn't sure what our relationship would look like going forward, but for the first time, I believed he was ready to step up and be a father. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. And for now, that was enough. We had long talks in the evenings, trying to figure out what came next. Alex had his own set of fears and regrets, but he was determined to be a part of our son's life. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of doubt, but we took it day by day, one step at a time. The hardest part of the whole process was healing the rift between me and my parents. After the birth, I knew I had to make peace with them, or at least try. The hurt of being abandoned was still fresh, but I couldn't keep holding on to the anger. My baby deserved to have a family, and that included them if they were willing. It was my mother who reached out first. She called me one evening, her voice hesitant, but filled with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Emma. I know I hurt you. I was scared and I didn't know how to handle it," she said, her voice shaky. "But I want to be part of your life again. I want to be a grandmother to your son." Her words, though not a complete apology, were enough. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I invited her over a few days later, and when she held my baby for the first time, it was as if a weight had been lifted off both our shoulders. The bond between us, fractured as it had been, began to heal slowly. It wasn't easy. There were still lingering tensions, unspoken words, and past regrets, but we had both taken the first step toward forgiveness. I still hadn't spoken to my father. The pain of his rejection was still raw, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face him. But for the first time, I didn't feel the same urgency. I knew that, in time, we would find our way back to each other. For now, I had my son, and I had Grandpa, and I had Alex. That was enough. As the months went by, life began to take shape in a way I had never expected. I was learning to balance the demands of motherhood with my own personal growth. I started taking night classes online, something I had always dreamed of doing but never thought I could. It was difficult. There were nights when I barely had time to sleep, let alone study, but I was determined to make a future for myself, to prove that I could be more than the girl who had been abandoned and thrown away. Alex and I continued to navigate our relationship, step by step. It wasn't easy, and we still had our disagreements, but we were committed to making it work. The way he looked at our son, the way he stepped up when I needed him most, made me believe that he could be the father I always hoped he would be. And though our relationship wasn't perfect, we were learning to build something new from the ground up. Grandpa, too, was a constant in my life. His health had improved slightly after the surgery, and though he couldn't do everything he used to, he still managed to be a guiding presence. We spent many evenings together, talking about life, about the future. He reminded me every day that I wasn't alone, that I never would be. One quiet evening, as I rocked my son to sleep, I looked out the window at the setting sun. I couldn't help but think about how far I had come. Just a year ago, I was standing on the doorstep, abandoned, unsure of what to do. Now, here I was, holding my baby, building a future, and learning to embrace everything that life had to offer, no matter how difficult it might be. I didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it. I had survived everything life had thrown at me, and I had learned that even in the darkest times, there was always a way forward. No matter how broken I had felt, no matter how lost I had been, I was still here. And I was stronger for it. With my son in my arms, and with the love and support of the people who mattered most, I knew that I could handle anything that came my way. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to live, to thrive, and to be the woman and the mother that I had always hoped I could be.